Drew, very good to see you, and thank you for taking the session for all of us. I am also excited and looking forward to the session today.
Yeah.
And I'll tag Neela. Drew, very good to see you, and thank you for taking the session for all of us.
Hold on, guys. I'm reducing
I
the
am
volume.
also excited and looking forward to the session today. Yeah, I just got my echo, Jyoti. I don't know if it's
I know, because I was recording on YouTube. All right. So let's do it again. Sorry. So let's retake and introduce yourself, what you do, etc. as well.
Yeah. Okay, I can get started.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Shall we go again, right, Jyoti?
Yes, we'll do one more round. Retake. Act 2.
Okay, in that case, Mithun, you want to go first?
Yeah. My name is Mithun. I take care of business of vacuum pump in India. And I'm feeling happy and excited. I tag Tarun.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, Andrew. My name is Tarun.
It's lunchtime, by the way, so we're all good.
Okay. My name is Tarun. I work at a VC fund called Matrix Partners, and we invest in early stage technology startups. I'm excited and looking forward to this session. And I tag Neela.
Thanks, Tarun. My name is Neela. Hi, Andrew. It's such a pleasure to be able to meet and interact with you today. I run a community for moms in Delhi NCR area. I'm looking at creating something national level. So that's about me. I'm feeling excited about today's session, tagging Shreya.
Thank you, Neela. Hi, I'm Shreya. I'm a pediatrician and high-risk newborn specialist. I'm feeling excited for the session. I tag Harsh.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hi, Andrew. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Harsh. I run a market research firm based out of India. And I'm feeling, like Mithun, I'm feeling excited. And like everybody else, I'm also feeling excited.
Sleepy?
Sleepy and excited.
All right.
I tag Pranav.
Thanks, Harsh. Hi, Andrew. Thank you for joining us. My name is Pranav. I work for a Japanese auto parts company in India. And I'm actually very excited for today's session because I read about you back in the day, about 3 years ago. And I was like, I want to talk to the person who introduced a much easier life for the rest of humanity. So, so glad to meet you in person. And I'll tag Deepika.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for being here. I'm Deepika. I'm a physician turned corporate professional. I work for a virtual scribing company, and I'm very excited and inspired to be here. I tag Mufassal.
Hi, good afternoon, Andrew, and thanks for taking the session. My name is Mufazzal. I work with Deutsche Bank, running M&A for them in India, and I'm very excited to be here for this session with you. I tag Jyoti.
I'm feeling happy and grateful. And I've met you, Andrew, I think 2 years back or sometimes. We had a good chat about something like that. So I'm really grateful that we reconnected and, you could create time to be here. So, here's what we're going to do. Everyone introduce themselves, right?
Jyoti Prabhakar.
Prabhakar, all right. Thanks, Prabhakar. Sorry, you're not on video. So that's the reason we missed you. So Prabhakar.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking out time. I'm a co-founder of a financial services company and really looking forward to today's session. Thank you. Back to you, Jyoti.
Yeah, thank you. And so Prabhakar's video is off because he's in probably a remote location in India where their connectivity is not too strong. So thank you for still joining us, Prabhakar. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Jyoti.
Here's what we are going to do. We are going to do a Socratic discussion, which is the whole session will be run through questions. And but before we do that, Andrew is going to take you to the stage and leave the stage to you for you to quickly say what maybe introduce yourself. Everybody knows you, by the way, so maybe a few words about how you are feeling in the moment and what are you looking forward to, and then we will let the stage be with everyone else, and everybody ask questions, and through questions we'll go around them. So over to you, Andrews.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm very flattered that you bothered to get up at 5:30 in the morning to listen to me. I frankly am currently in what is some sort of New Zealand prison, in the context that actually we're in isolation and have been since we came back from the UK in a couple of weeks ago. So we get out on Monday. So I'm a little stir crazy, if I'm being honest, just at the moment. But look, I always love talking about the 4-day week journey and why I think this is something that is the future for work wherever we are in the world. So I'm really looking forward to the session. I'm assuming do you need me to, Jackie, to talk a little bit about life, why I was prompted to do this?
Yeah, I think maybe you could spend a couple of minutes sharing that, and then we'll have just to set the context for the conversation. And and likely based on your experience, people may have may have some other questions. So we'll give them freedom to ask whatever that they want, I guess. But it'll be good for you to set the context of why were you inspired to sort of champion and be a global ambassador for the 4-day work week.
Right. Well, what I'm going to start this off, that I am not somebody who came to this trying to get work-life balance. The journey for me started very, very simply by looking at some research that had come out in the United Kingdom about productivity in an organization. And what I really wanted to understand was, how could I improve productivity in my own business? And the research that I read said that it was British, so the Brits were productive for 2.5 hours a day. And there was a backup piece of research, which had some Canadian research, which was about 1.5 hours a day. And I wondered why that was happening. And I wondered if it was happening in my business. So what I then decided to do was to say, well, is there a different way of working that would improve the productivity in my business by eliminating the things that stop my staff being as productive as they might have been? And as a quid pro quo for that, could I therefore give them more time off? So the concept of the 4-day week came out of a discussion, not traditionally the way this comes out about work-life balance. This came out of a discussion about how I made my business better, how I made things better for my staff. And the thesis was that if it was better for the staff, my productivity would be better. So we call this rule very simply the 100-80-100 rule. 100% pay, 80% time, provided we get 100% productivity. So it's as simple as that, but very much coming initially from the business side. Now, subsequently, of course, it's very clear that it delivers pretty significant benefits to your company, to your people, to your communities, and ultimately, if we all did it, it would deliver great benefits to the world.
Brilliant. That sounds like extremely exciting, and to know that you can work less and still earn as much, and end of the day have a lot more time on your hand to do all that one wants to do, right? So less burnout in the whole process. Brilliant. So let's begin with, let's have Tarun. Why don't you begin, asking the question, and then we'll go around the room. So just to make it easier, what I'll do is I'll call out people so that it's easier.
Yes, just give me one moment. I'll just open up the questions I posted. You
got the questions, Andrew? I send a...
Sure.
So they
I do. I have them in front of me.
Yeah, all right. So they may be different, but that's all right. Tarun, you want me to call out somebody else?
No, I'm just opening up my questions. Yeah, so Andrew, my first question, and by the way, I love the way you just put it, Andrew, which is your starting point was not work-life balance. The starting point was, how does one become more productive as an organization? So, and I think it was brilliant. I think my first question was in the changing context of work from anywhere, which is what several organizations around the world are now moving to. How relevant is the 4-day work week or even a 5-day work week, right? Because everyone's lives between work and home and have kind of intermerged, and there's very little distinction now, right? And I find myself taking more breaks during the week, but also filling up my weekends with work. And so there's very little distinction now, right, between the two. And so I guess I wanted to understand, especially for knowledge economy workers, where there's no concept of, going to a manufacturing plant and putting in a few days. How does this concept still apply?
Right, thanks, Darren. Well, look, I actually think it's even more relevant than it was before. And I think the reason for that is that if you think about it, when we all talk about the working from home movement, actually, we're no longer working from home. We're actually sleeping in the office in a way. So the problem is that all the research indicates that once we started working from home, we did exactly what you were saying. We actually increased the hours that we were working. Because obviously you don't have those breaks of the time that you'd be going to work or coming back from work. So one thing that the 4-day week does, 4-day week in some ways is clickbait. What we're talking about here is reduced hours working. We're talking about getting the work week down from a traditional 40 hours to a 32 in exchange for maintaining productivity. Now, the argument about where you work is different from the question of the length of time that you work. Now, my argument would be that especially in the information age, fourth industrial revolution, all of that sort of stuff, creativity is quite an important issue. And the 5-day week was created primarily for manufacturing industry back in the 1920s. So if you want your staff to be creative or empathic or have imagination or be able to actually do the sort of stuff that we want them to do in modern industry, actually having them fresh, rested, having those breaks that give them the chance to be creative actually become really important. So what I think we've got to try and do here is to say that the two things have, they're related, but they are different. And actually, arguably, when you do start working from home, working from anywhere, if you don't put boundaries around that, you will end up with staff that burn out remarkably quickly because they will just keep working. It's very easy to do. And I think if you look at, organizations like Alphabet or you look at Apple, they're building things like the Googleplex to make you stay and work for the longest possible time. And I actually think for people to be truly creative, you actually have to give them a chance to step away and give them the chance to recharge their batteries. And at the same time, whilst they're doing that, they're also engaging with their families. They're doing things for themselves. And that actually in turn means that when they are focused on working for you, they're far more productive than would be the case if they just keep churning away.
Very helpful. Follow-up question. You mentioned it's basically reducing the 40-hour work week, which I think a lot of people on the call will agree is actually not 40 hours, significantly more for most people, right?
We'll come to that. Yes, but go on.
Yes, because I think with the whole interconnected world, the reality is all of us are putting in significantly more hours than we used to even 5 years ago, right? Now, my question is, how did you reach? And by the way, I completely agree with you. It's not that those 60 hours or 70 hours that we're putting in are productive, right? Very often you find yourself just doing things without knowing why you're doing it. And you also find yourself, especially in India, I find people are far more distracted. There is very little separation between sort of once you're at work, you're working, and once you're at home, you're not working. Because you're working at home, you're basically not working in the office, right? And you're taking longer coffee breaks, all sorts of stuff. How did you reach the answer that 30 or 32 hours is the ideal amount of time? Would love to understand that research.
Yeah. Well, I didn't actually. I mean, what my premise is that I wanted to make sure that my productivity, the output, remained the same. That's all my goal was when I started. The 100-80-100 rule: 100% pay, 80% time, 100% productivity, and 100% customer service. Right. So what I was focusing on was the output, rather than the time it took us to do something. So, we use time as a surrogate for productivity. And actually, one of the things that I find when I'm traveling the world and I'm talking to business leaders, one of the first questions that comes out is people say, well, how do you measure productivity? Now that tells me immediately that people are using time, they're not using output. So what I was focusing on was what was the structure that would enable us to deliver the same output, but have my team working less. Now, the simple way of me doing this was to say, if my people were only productive for 3 hours a day, following what is broadly a global average, all I had to do was get 45 minutes of additional productivity in each of 4 days to get the same level of productivity as I would have had in 5. So it was just an easy concept to say, well, look, let's try the trade of, working 4 days, have an additional day off. Now, to be honest, that's not what we do in my company now, because what we do is we have people who take a day off, we have people who take 2 afternoons off, and I have people often with children who will work 5 days but compressed hours. Now, it just happens in New Zealand and quite a lot of cultures around the world. That's the norm. Broadly, the 40 hours is the norm. I understand that one of the issues in India at the moment is there's some legislation about trying to get it down from about 100 hours a week to reduce it. But there is one other piece. So two things there. One is, if you're working longer than 40 hours, don't try and get it down to 32, but get it down from 60 to 50. And also, if you're talking about your staff, those of us who have the benefits of people working for us, we run our own businesses and all of that, we get all the benefit. We've got to recognize that we're borrowing our people from their lives effectively. They don't get the big bucks at the end of the day. And so whilst we can work these long hours, we've got to recognize that we get paid the danger money for that. And maybe we've got to recognize our people don't get that. And therefore, how do we share the benefits that we're getting? Now, part of my thesis was to say, I can actually give people time off, provided my productivity was there. But what that meant, I'm giving them an employee benefit that costs me nothing, but it's almost priceless as far as the employee is concerned, because they're getting time. Money is easy to match, but time isn't easy to match. And if you can give your people the time off that matters to them, that's the thing that drives the better performance. That makes sense?
Yeah, understood. Okay, I think I'm done with my questions. Jyoti, maybe you can tag somebody else.
Yeah, Mufi, you have a question that you'd like to ask? You want to come in later?
I'll come in later, Jyoti.
All right. So Pranav, you had a question that you had posted. So why don't you come in next?
Okay. So hi again, Andrew. Basically, I work in the auto industry, and what you said about the 100 hours coming down is primarily our industry is known for that. We're basically running 2 shifts, 7 days a week. People are even covering 2 shifts, etc. It's really a Socratic question. Do you think it's even possible in a country like India, with the industry like our industry, to even consider a 4-day work week? That kind of paradigm shift is possible? I don't know.
Let me try that to answer that 2 ways. Right? So let me start first of all by, let's look at the industry you're in. Volkswagen run a 4-day week. They run 24-hour, 7-day week manufacturing in Germany, but they're on a 4-day week. And why they do that? Because they have worked out over a period of time that actually having the people on the production lines, admittedly, you've got robotics that are coming out, but the people on the production line produce better output as a consequence of working less time. Now, we've known about this for about 100 years. One of the examples I talk about is of all things, is a British munitions factory in the First World War, where it was running a 7-day week production line, and they dropped the working week from 7 days to 6 days, and they found that productivity went up, and actually the quality of the output, less dud shells, I guess, also that went up as well. So, and you can find this often in manufacturing, that by the time you're getting to the end of long shifts, productivity is not as good as it might be, quality of output is not as good as it might be. Now, again, I'm not saying that you're absolutely religiously get down to a 4-day week, but a reduction in the shift, if that in turn doesn't lead to a reduction in productivity and leads to an improvement in output, why wouldn't you do it? And it's quite easy for us to say, well, if we're if you're running 2 shifts 7 days a week, you've already got the capability of rejigging those shifts to make sure that production remains 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's point number one. Nobody's working 24 hours, 7 days.
Absolutely.
The second thing about that is part of this is about empowering the workforce to ask the question, what is stopping you being as productive as you might be? Now, the trouble often is if you ask that question to your workforce, what they hear is if we find better ways of working, what they will do is cut the workforce. So actually, you often don't get those improvements out of that. Whereas if you liberate that by saying, look, the deal here is what we want to do is we want to give you more time away, but we're not looking to do cost cutting. What we've found is that productivity rises and rises materially because we get rid of those roadblocks that exist in the company. And most companies that implement it are seeing between 25 and 40% improvement in productivity. Now, that is happening regardless of the industry and regardless of the sector. So in terms of, this is, I believe, industry agnostic. And I'll give you a very simple example. My book that I wrote on this has a chapter at the end of it, which is Cows Need Milking Twice a Day. And that was prompted because I was in an office, politician's office in Wellington, and a guy sat next to me. We started talking about the 4-day week. And he said, it won't work in dairy. I said, why not? He said, well, it's a 7-day-a-week job and cows need milking twice a day. 2 days ago, I'm sitting reading our local rag here in Auckland about a farmer up the road who has now got robots milking his cows. So actually, what we're saying really is if you don't think there's a better way in working in your business, you've actually reached the pinnacle of human achievement. Don't think so, right? I think we've seen massive improvements to productivity. The cultural issue is a little harder. And I think it's a journey. Countries will go at different speeds. Very clearly, if you look at Scandinavia, you look at Holland. I think Holland's got the shortest working week in Europe. It's about 24 to 26 hours a week. You go and have a look at, the UK, and it's probably 42, 43 hours a week. So, and probably if we look at India, you're sort of off the scale to the left. So if that's the case, this is about a journey of progressively reducing the time. And if you can do that as a business without losing productivity, what's happening, of course, is the benefits start to kick into the rest of the economy. in terms of impact on health, impact on the environment, impact on family cohesion. And if you think about it, actually, when Henry Ford introduced the 5-day week, he did it because he wanted his employees to have time to buy his product. And so, again, 5-day week's an auto industry construct, right? We were all on 6 before that. So the thing about this is this is not a silver bullet. It's not a journey that you instantaneously do. But yeah, if you start to ask the question, how could I make my business better? And how can I share that with my employees? And they will then get certain benefits. And because they get the benefits, my productivity goes up. It's this virtuous circle that, for me, says why the 4-day week, reduced hours working works. Does that make sense? I'm just.
No, it absolutely does. Actually, I think it's time for us to also experiment on this, because just to pick on what you said, because of the pandemic, we have had a couple of months where we've had to do stop-start production. And during those months, personally, I felt we were more productive. But working for a Japanese company in the auto industry in India is kind of a trifecta, which is difficult to break from the normal mold.
Yeah, they are the only country in the world with a word for dying in the office, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So we're well trained to be prepared for that. But yes, thank you so much. It really does make sense. So.
But equally, here's an interesting point. One of the few countries in the world that is actually actively bringing in some sort of legislation now to reduce the working week is Japan. And of course, the famous trial that people often refer to, not in your industry, is Microsoft Japan's trial with trying a 4-day week, changing work practices, mainly around in their industry. Was the elimination of unnecessary meetings and reducing the number of people in a meeting time. They got a 39.9% improvement in productivity of that. So part of this is understanding what are the roadblocks in your industry, in your business. And the people who know what those roadblocks are actually your employees. If you empower the employees and the benefit that they get is more time off, that's what powers the concept.
Absolutely. I think it makes sense. I'm going to look for this Microsoft Japan study and hand it over to my Japanese president. Please read it.
Yeah. Go on. Well, 2 things you can do. Go and have a look. If you go on our website, 4-day week website, 4dayweek.com, there's a white paper. It's got materials. By all means, feel free to buy lots of copies of my book and send it to Japan. But seriously, some of that stuff is on the website. Some of the research, so it's a quick place to go to have a look and pull that down.
All right, thanks a lot, Andrew. That really made sense. I'm motivated now. So thanks, Jyoti. Back to you. You can.
Yes, Prabhakar, would you like to come in next?
Sure, Jyoti. Thank you. Andrew, I had a question for people who are, in a startup or planning to, start up. And typically the understanding is that startups, it has to be, you have to work like a maniac or 24/7. That's what it needs to really, grow. So your advice or, what are your views on it?
Do you really? Or, let's be honest. Do you think that actually people talk about working all the time because that's what we sort of expect? And, the Jack Ma's and the Elon Musk's of this world with the, nobody changes the world unless you're working 100 hours. But the fascinating thing, I'm just reading $1 Billion Loser. I don't know, Adam Newman and WeWork book at the moment. And, this is a guy who works all the time, apparently was famous for having meetings in the early hours of the day, but is also quite famous for having a sauna tub, drinking tequila shots in his meetings and all the other things. But if you asked him, was he working 100 hours a week? The answer was yes. Was he actually productive when he was doing it? Probably not. And there were points when he was productive, but a large chunk of time he probably wasn't. And actually probably was throwing in lots of meetings and then stopping half his staff to be productive. Because we like to be busy. Now, I have a couple of technology startups. We have a startup in the UK, which is in the legal tech sphere. They're on a 4-day week. If you look at what's happening in the United States now with problems around attracting staff, and I don't know whether the situation is the same in India, but it's certainly, we're having it here. You know, we call it the Great Resignation in the United States. There's a lot of people, a lot of young people saying, you know what, I'm not prepared to work like that anymore. Now, again, if you're the founder and you're going to get all the benefits of this and you feel you want to work 100 hours a week, knock yourself out. But the reality is, if all you're going to be doing is having massive turnover of staff in your startup, or not being able to attract the talent because somebody else down the road is going to pay them more, how do you attract and retain good talent? Well, one of the things we found is by doing this, we're able to get that talent. We're not having to compete absolutely dollar by dollar in terms of the amount that we're paying. And so therefore it's part of that strategy, because it also says something about your company, about your ethos, that actually trying to find a different, better way to do things, it suddenly is an opportunity. And I'll finish by talking about something else. When we were on the book tour, well, 2 years ago, in the days when we could actually really travel, I was working out of I think it was a WeWork office in New York. And, it's all the startups all around there. The noise level that was in that office was so incredible, it was almost impossible to concentrate. And one of the things that we did when we rejigged how we did our offices was to reconstruct them in such a way so the noise level, the interruption levels dropped, and that in turn drove higher productivity. So again, the same thing needs to be thought through. You may well find that everything that you're doing, especially if you're using things like shared workspaces, actually are making your staff less productive. Consequently, you've got to work the long hours. But if you've got those periods of time when you can be super productive, it's the deep work concept, if you will, then actually, you produce greater output. So statistically, in an open plan office, you are interrupted once every 11 minutes, and it takes you 22 minutes to get back to full productivity. So if you give your people time when they're not going to be disturbed, the net result of that is higher output. You may well find that working less then equals more. And then they're rested, they don't make mistakes, but because they're rested, they've got that time for the subconscious to work and for them to then come back more creative. So I actually believe this is relevant for startups as well as established companies. And in many ways, I think it's more relevant for the startup because of what we're looking to do, which is to reimagine the world. Well, part of reimagining the world is reimagining how we work.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Jyoti. So, Jyoti, back to you.
Thanks, Prabhakar. All right. So who has the next question? Yeah, Mufi and then Harsh.
Thanks, Jyoti, and thanks, Andrew. Some great insights so far. So thanks so much for that. Look, I mentioned I'm part of the investment banking industry, and that's one which has we're trying to do more than the number of hours in a day. What I'd like to ask you are two things. And look, for years in this industry, there's been a direct correlation between the number of hours you spend in the office and the bonus you eventually get at the end of the year. And I completely hear you when you're saying, I'm seeing a lot of youngsters come in and try to change that today by saying, look, I'm not willing to, spend those kind of hours. But what I'd love to hear from you is how do you drive that organization change in in an industry that's functioned like this for such a long period of time? And maybe some quick insights from you or inputs from you in terms of the work you've done with some of the banks and what kind of results you've been able to sort of see, and if people are willing to make those changes.
Well, Muffy, look, I've got to come clean, right? I'm an investment banker from way back, and I mean, I did all the things that you're talking about. I mean, in fact, I had a couple of mates work for the Japanese in the dim and distant days, and they used to tag team to try and break the willpower of the Japanese management, because the game was that they always had to be the last person out of the office. So one would work and then go home for a couple of hours to relax, and then he'd come back into the office so they could work late into the evening. I know that. I did the same thing, worked in the city, worked for Macquarie Bank in Australia, director from Macquarie for quite a few years. But I also had, in my banking career, 2 people have nervous breakdowns in front of me. I'll be honest, I blew up a marriage. I was probably a complete and utter shit for a large period of the time when I was working for the bank, and was I? Well, and I guess I'm coming back to, whilst the culture made me work late, I equally remember that we would all go to the gym at a period of time, or there would be, maybe you'd go out for a few drinks in the evening and then you'd come back and work through the night because that was what it was like. So one of the starting points here is, let's think about that block of time at 2 a.m. in the morning. Are you actually as productive at 2 a.m. as you were at 9 a.m.? No, right? And so this is the thing, by the way, one of the rules I have with my own law firms when we're working for us, I won't pay for work done late in the evening. Because if they're going to charge me a 6-minute block of work at night, I know that's not I'm not going to get as much out of that 6-minute block at night as I'd have got out of a 6-minute block at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'm very happy for my competitor to pay for that. I'm not, right? And partly that's the problem with our industry, that the culture that we've grown up with, it's exciting to do this stuff. It's what was the buzz. But you are increasingly seeing people burning out. You're increasingly seeing that you're not necessarily getting the top talent that you were getting once upon a time. They'll die, often they'll go into the tech startup rather than go into investment banking, because why would I go into that sort of culture? And I think so part of this is to recognize that we as an industry have got to change. Now, I would argue our industry is in finance, really. Finance, legal, but to all intents and purposes, we're in financial services. So making that cultural shift was actually quite hard. My board thought I was an idiot. My management team thought I was an idiot, because they've all been absolutely conditioned, as I was, that working that way was the only way that they can get on. Now, it will not work unless the very top of the organization literally turns around and says, we're not doing that anymore. We're not going to phone you at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're not going to be making you work at the weekends. Because if the leadership work at the weekends or do that sort of culture, then every other member of the company will do exactly the same, because it's the character trait, isn't it? If you think about going in, you're not exactly a shrinking violet if you go into investment banking. And you're also going into investment banking because you probably like the compensation. So the net result of that is the industry self-perpetuates the problem. And it's only if you get a circuit breaker that you'll do that. Now, is that going to happen in banking anytime soon? If I'm being honest, probably not. At least not in investment banking anytime soon. But we're starting to see it in accounting. For example, big accountancy firms starting to move that way. We're starting to see it in the law. And I think we will get it in banking in due course, because a lot of the repetitive stuff will inevitably ultimately get done by AI. So and now analytics, all of the stuff often which in the junior stuff causes that let's work through the night stuff. A lot of that is going to find smarter ways of doing it. And then you're going to come back to who are the people who are closing the deals, coming up with the creative ideas. And actually you need a different type of person in that. And we know, therefore, that you get to the top of the tree, how you're working is different. And you're as much about dealing with people trying to get the transactions as it is about just sitting there doing grunt work. So the investment banking industry will, without a doubt, be the very last people dragging, kicking and screaming into the 21st century. There is no doubt about that. But ultimately, in a war for talent, you want to get the best and brightest people. You're going to have to rethink where you're going to get them from, how you're going to hang on to them. Because I think it's clear, if you look at the movement, for example, from US business schools, the top talent isn't going into investment banking anymore. It's heading to the West Coast. So we've got to rethink that, or we're not going to get the people we need in the industry. Don't know whether that answers the question, because investment banking possibly is the industry that disproves the rule.
Yeah, I think what you see is when you have the more senior bankers, as you say, it has to come from the top. The senior bankers are spending maybe 3-day work weeks. And you have very lean bottom teams now. So it's the middle guys that actually end up getting crunched.
Absolutely. Because in the old days, when I started in the City of London, we used to, you had to have a grey suit or a blue suit, apart from Fridays, when you could dress in tweeds because you were going to go to the country. And you used to stop at 4 o'clock for sherry, very civilized. Then Big Bang happened and it all went to hell in a handcart.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks. Sorry, Jyoti, back to you.
Thanks. Harsh, you'd like to come in next?
Yeah, quick question.
Yes, Harsh.
Yeah. So I've got a question. So what we tried in my organization, we had a 5.5 working day culture, because we were in a city which had a 5.5 working day culture. So, and there was a lot of pressure to reduce that to 5. And what we did was, instead of giving the time back to them, what we did was we made that half day an engagement day, right? So effectively you're working less, but you're spending that extra half a day with your colleagues, bonding together. So in the context of reducing, work from 5 days to 4 days in a week, what I views on implementing something like that, where we still get them to office, but we spend that extra day not working, maybe learning, or just bonding with each other, or doing something creative.
Well, as I said, Harsh, it's what works for one company doesn't necessarily work for another company. You got to find your own pathway here. But in essence, what we're talking about is something very similar. First of all, it is understanding what's happening within the workday. Remember, this is my starting point. It was said I felt that my staff weren't being as productive as they might be. And so that therefore, if I could increase the amount of time that they were super productive, that would mean that obviously my output went up. Now, equally, what that means is if they're actually getting their work done faster in each workday, as well as getting the work done in 4 days rather than 5. So in a traditional day, if you think about my little simple 11 minutes, 22 minutes test, if I have an hour, which is called a quiet hour, which we do, we have people, when people can put a little flag in a pot or something and not get disturbed. That hour probably is delivering me 3 hours of conventional productivity. Now that then means there is more time for them to engage constructively and better, in a better way, with their team members. Equally, if you've got, one of the benefits of a 4-day week is if you've got somebody rotating out of the company all the time, you can't do what we typically do, which is so-and-so is not in the office today. It'll get picked up when they come back. What actually we then found is we cross-trained quite hard, because you had to be able to cover that job. We had to be able to deliver the service. Now that stood us in massive good stead through the COVID lockdowns, because when somebody disappeared off being, not being able to come to the office, it didn't make any difference. There was somebody who could conventionally backfill. What it also means is on the 5th day, people are spending the time to do the things that matters to them. And quite often, that's either doing their own side gig, or it's going back to college, or it's learning a skill, or all of those sort of things. What you're doing is actually you're recognizing that if we want to take our workforce forward, we've actually got to give them more time to be better employees. So I absolutely totally get what you're doing. I mean, obviously what I would be saying is I'd be doing that and trying to get it down to 5 days as the next step. But the concept is right. What you're recognizing, I think, is that we are giving our people more time to be better. My own mantra here is I want my people to be the best they can be in the office and the best they can be at home. And if they're the best they can be in the office and the best they can be at home, inevitably they're healthier, they're happier, they're more engaged, they're more empowered, they're more creative. Let's go out on a limb here. A healthier, happier workforce produces more. It just does. So I'm not turning people into automatons. I'm not absolutely focused on minutiae of output. In fact, I don't even look at productivity anymore because I don't have to, because my overall productivity has jumped so high that I know it's working. So this is a journey, and you start from where you are, and the objective, I believe, is just quite simply, let's try and rebalance it over a period of time. But I like the concept. I think it makes sense.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oh, sure, mute.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, all right.
Thanks, Andrew. Back to you, Jyoti.
All right, thanks, sir. Yes, who's got the next question?
Yeah, Jyoti, can I ask now?
Yes, Mithun.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. The insights are really great. I have an organization where we have people working in the office as well as people out in the field providing aftermarket support to the customers. Now, my question is, how do we implement this 4 days a week concept for the people who are outside the office and working for the aftermarket support for the customers?
Well, again, I mean, I think we talked. Thank you, Mithun. We talked earlier about this, about where you work isn't relevant as much as the amount of time you're working. Now, we had remote teams. In fact, we do have remote teams. We have people who are operating outside the office. So and we had branches as well. So we had a central thing, and we have 17 branches around New Zealand. So we had people sort of all over the place. The key thing is, when I introduced my company, I basically said, I have absolutely no idea whatsoever how I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. And so in answer to your question, I have absolutely no idea how you're going to do it in your business. So ask your staff how they would do it. Because that is the point. This is process re-engineering from the bottom up. And one of the key things here is it doesn't matter where you are. What you're trying to do is wherever that person is, whether they're in the office, whether they're remote, whether they're providing a particular service, what you want to do is see that the quality and the quantity of the service that is being provided is better. Now, if that means you have remote operators and actually you're dropping down a bit, you've got to rethink your shift patterns so that you make sure that people are covering your clients 24 hours a day. But actually, if they are more productive and doing more stuff in that shorter shift, you are still getting the better output. And what we found is where we had to bring in more people, it didn't matter because the output more than covered and some the cost that we did to bring it on. Now, I have to say that my overall staff numbers have actually probably dropped about 15% since we introduced this. So the difficulty is you've got to let the organization work out how you implement it. But it doesn't matter where you are about implementing it because people want to get that rebalance, provided they're going to deliver you your outcomes. So it's a very unsatisfactory answer. I'm sorry, but it is as simple as asking and empowering the staff to work out how they would do it and how they would be able to deliver your objectives in less time. That's all you're asking them to do, and they'll know what's the problem. So, I know of a plumbing business here, an electrician business here, and they've got remote guys out in the field. But actually, what was really causing them the problem was how they were recording their hours and how they were creating the billing process. They fixed that problem, and the net result is suddenly that was happening in their shift. They've now stopped doing that. Because they've stopped doing that and that was more efficient, they are actually able to get a bit more time to do the jobs which were actually paying the bills. It's working out what that barrier was.
Okay. But is it a challenge that in such cases you need some time to increase your number of workforce also?
Increase the number of workers?
Yeah.
No, we didn't. I mean, I didn't, because okay. I it's often the glib answer. If we reduce working by 20%, then I'm going to have 20% of my staff. That actually is not true. I'm trying to get better productivity with the same number of staff. And that's the key point here. It's, if you're just recruiting more people, you're not getting better productivity. The gig is you've got to get them more productivity. 100% pay, 80% time, 100% productivity. It's not a 100%, if you will, 100% pay, 80% time, 80% productivity. That's not the deal. And so because of that, you don't need to bring in more people. Once you've identified how you do things better, such that your productivity goes up. And as I said, on average, we're seeing 25 to 40% improvement in productivity across industries, regardless of industry, of people bringing in a concept of reduced hours working.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrews. I hand it over back to Jyoti.
Thank you. I don't know how. I just looked at time. It's already 6:25. 1 hour has just sort of gone off in a frizzy. But I just love the power of the whole idea of the 4-day work week, because I see it's solving so many problems that plague our industry. Women will not leak out of the corporate world, which happens. We have so many talented women leaving out just because it's so many number of hours. We'll not have talented people getting burnt at 50 years. And, there's so much of experience that you gather by the time you're 50, instead of giving it back to your industry, you sort of take retirement and, do something else, and, that'll get solved. So I see a lot of benefit coming out, Andrew. I think it's a massively beautiful idea, and I'm definitely going to be your supporter. Hopefully, bring that concept into the country, and we are one of the younger countries in the world with a lot of young people, and it's not slog hours that is going to lead us forward. It's going to be creativity. It's going to be innovation, and you're absolutely right. Albert Einstein, didn't think of all his solutions while he was in the laboratory, but while he was playing the violin. And so we do need to give out time to our people to go home and play their violins, whatever fashion that may be. So bringing this conversation to a closure has been, let's go around the room with each one of you sharing, how are you feeling as an outcome of this conversation? Many learnings today. One breakthrough learning that you like to share that would make a difference to you, and then one action, a breakthrough action in your life, that will move you forward with greater velocity to realize your greatest dreams and deepest communion with your higher self, lead yourself and your business from good to great, and have it all. This seems to be like a key idea to have it all. So who'd like to begin? Yes, Harsh.
I feel quite excited and encouraged by what I've heard. So thanks for your time, Andrew. I'm happy to sort of try this. And we're in a knowledge services space. So one of my key takeaways is, so one of our key challenges is retaining people, right? So I love the idea that, getting to a 4-day working week or reducing it from 40 hours to some number of hours can provide a competitive advantage while hiring knowledge workers, right? Which is unmatched, right? You can have, another coffee machine installed in office, and you can have a ping pong table, and you can do all that, which other companies are doing, right? And you can probably match your dollar by dollar the compensation that you're offering. But having a 4-day working week might just offer a competitive advantage which no one else has, right? So it could provide an unparalleled advantage while hiring. So that's a big learning, Andrew. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I would say the great stories in my company, just on that, are the guys talking about picking up their kids for school for the first time. Running across the playground, throwing their arms around their dad's legs and saying, "What are you doing here? Can't put a price on it. I can't pay you enough." Because you can never buy that. You can only experience it.
Yes, sir. Go ahead and tag. Thank you, Andrew. I think that was a great perspective. Harsh, go ahead and tag someone.
Tag Mufi.
Thanks, Harsh. And thanks, Andrew. I guess my biggest takeaway was, as far as investment banking is concerned, I think a career change is the fastest way to 4 days. I'm not sure how I'm going to drive that change, but look, I'm definitely encouraged to try. And to that extent, if you're ever looking for an ex-investment banker, I'm sure your organization goes to 4-day work week, so I'm available. I'll tag Tarun.
Before you do that, Mufi, how are you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling excited and encouraged to try this out. So I'm going to try and at least drive as much of that change I can with my team.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mufi.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll tag Tarun.
Yeah, actually very similar to Mufi. I feel encouraged, and it's actually refreshing to see how some of these ideas are working around the world. And I'm sure it's not come without its fair share of opposition, right, from people initially. Very similar to investment banking, I think, unfortunately, startups work the same way, where people almost always, especially developers, right, like, instead of thinking less is more, there's always this thing of like, let me put in that extra few hours every day. So I don't know practically how we'll do it, because just the culture in India is, people celebrate like working 20 hours a day. People celebrate stories of people who come in on a Monday and go home only on a Wednesday. And so I think it's I don't know practically how we change that, but to the extent I can do that, at least in my team, that's something that I would love to try.
Yeah, look, I would say I would encourage you to have a look what's happening on the West Coast. Increasingly, technology companies, and we're running a major pilot program in the US at the moment, increasing major startups, groups like Kickstarter, for example, are coming onto this, are shifting to a 4-day week, and they need it because they can't attract and retain the right talent. So I understand the issue, but I do encourage you to have a look at what's happening. There is a sea change now happening, especially in startup land, to attract and retain talent. You need to rethink this.
I'll definitely read about it. Thank you. I'll tag Mithun.
Thank you, Tarun. I feel inspired, excited, and encouraged to implement this in my team too, and look forward for more such interactions with the team and as well as with my fellow mates. It was exciting. I tag Deepika.
Thanks, Mithun. So thank you, Andrew. This was indeed insightful. I feel encouraged to try this at work because I employ a number of physicians, and in India, we physicians also work 36 hours straight duties. So it will extremely be insightful. The one breakthrough action that I want to take is I definitely want to run a survey in my team to ask them if they had one extra day of holiday, what would they want to do? And given the insights that we received from there, we'll see whether we could implement this. So thank you, Andrew, for your time.
You're welcome. Look, and medical is really interesting, right? The Americans kill 250,000 people a year in their health system as a consequence of misdiagnosis or maltreatment occasioned by stress or overwork. And who do you want to be operated on? Who do you want to treat you? Do you want to be treated by the doctor who's been working 40, 50 hours straight, or the doctor who's fresh and actually is capable of making better judgments? It's not about the length of time. It's not about how many patients you see. It's about the quality of output.
I think on that note, I have to tag Shreya. She's the right person to be tagged right now.
Thank you, Deepika. So today's session was inspiring. Thank you so much, Andrew. And my takeaway is I will try to take more breaks. I'll try to reduce the working hours. That is my takeaway.
Thank you, Shreya. And with Shreya saying that, that's quite a lot. And she's the leading pediatrician in our country. And I've been telling her to take breaks, longer breaks, but I'm so glad that you're able to inspire her to do that.
I tag Neela.
Thanks, Shreya. Thank you, Andrew, for the session today. It was very insightful. I am very motivated to try this in my organization where we have 100% women working. I'm sure I'm going to share insights from this conversation, and I'm sure they'll be extremely delighted to see this being put in action. So thank you once again, tagging Pranav.
Before you just do that, I just should say that the one thing we did is once we introduced it, the first thing I did was all the women in the organization who had negotiated 4-day week contracts on 80% pay, we increased their salary to 100% because they actually are often our most productive workers. Women with children are very good managers of time, and actually as a consequence are probably your most productive staff. So it's a key thing for us. Women should now negotiate on output, not the amount of time they're in the office. That's very liberating once you do that.
So glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
And Neela, and Andrew, Neela is the leading voice of the women community in our country. And Neela, that just the 4-day week is like a great, tool in your toolkit to, create a more equal world in our country.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
look, Neela, you need to, sorry, I'm sorry keeping jumping in, but Neela, you should go and have a look at the Irish campaign, Better for Everyone. That a key part of the Irish campaign are the women's groups. And that's deliberately because in Ireland, I think it's 95% of care responsibilities in Ireland are still being handled by women. And we're never going to change that unless we get our men out of the office, as well as bringing our women up. So it's worth having a look at the materials that they're doing, because it's a key part of changing this conversation.
That is so true. I will look this up. It's very interesting. I will definitely look that. Thank you.
I think Prabhakar. Yeah, Prabhakar.
Thanks, Jyoti. Thank you, Andrew. I feel really excited, encouraged, and one of the key things I feel is productivity killer I've identified is meetings that we run. So I'm going to do something about meetings. What? I don't know, but definitely. So thank you for your time and all the insights. Wonderful.
Brilliant.
Absolutely, Pratik. You need to look at the Microsoft thing. It's very, very simple. 5 in a meeting, no meeting longer than half an hour, and use Microsoft Teams. I think those were the 3 things they did that got their 40% improvement in productivity. We all attend meetings we shouldn't.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Everybody else has shared, right?
I'm left.
Oh, yes, Pranav.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pranav.
So thank you, Andrew. It's been really insightful. I think the one thing I'm taking away is the 100-80-100 rule, which I'm going to do a little more research on. And the other 2 things which I'm going to do research on is the Volkswagen 4-day work week and Microsoft Japan's 39.9% improvement. And I'm looking forward to you launching something in India. So I think Mufi and I at least can join you. So you have part of your workforce taken care of. So that's what I'm excited about. So please. So
see, this is what happens. And so that proves your point, Andrew, that you attract the topmost talent, with just declaring that you're a 4-day work week. I mean, Mufi and Pranav, I guess, are one of the most talented people, in the country, and they're already saying they want to drop our jobs and work for you because you're offering that.
Well, it is all about it. It says something about your organization. If you turn around and say, look, we're going to do this. Everybody, when we did this 3 years ago, everybody thought we were mad. And now this is a conversation that's now occurred in 97, I've spoken in 97 countries worldwide. We've got government-sponsored trials occurring all over the world. There are companies in India that are doing this. There are companies actually all over the world that are starting on this journey. So, it's about making the way we work fit for purpose for the 21st century, and that's the challenge here. Why are we working on a 20th century manufacturing-based construct for work? Makes no sense to me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Andrews. I'm very, very grateful that you could take out your time. I know it's like 1 p.m. like lunchtime for you, so you took out some time from there and to be part of a conversation today. Created a lot of I think excitement around this whole new idea, and hope to see some butterfly effect in the rest part of the country as an outcome of this little conversation. So I'm going to hand over the baton back to you for you to conclude our conversation, sharing with us how you are feeling as an outcome of being in this conversation. What are you taking away and what will you do differently because you spoke with us?
Well, look, first of all, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. As you can tell, I can talk the hind legs off a donkey on this because this is without exception the best thing I have ever done in business. You don't get many chances to change the world. This happens to be mine. So, I always come away from these sessions being very, very energized because, we are running a global campaign in our sort of spare time. Not because you make money out of doing 4-day weeks, but, this is a chance to really make a difference. A material difference, not just to our society, but arguably, things like our environment. 4-day week is desperately environmentally sound. What I would encourage you to do, if you're interested, go to the 4-day week website, www.4dayweek.com. Go and buy my book. not because I'm trying to flog the book, because all the profits from that go to supporting our research campaigns. We're running research through universities around the world to prove the benefits of this. But it actually is a very practical book on how we did it, what the arguments were for and against, and how we implemented this 4-day week, the 100 business in our business. What would I do differently? Well, look, I mean, I haven't done enough in India. India is the source of a wonderful quote that when we implemented the 4-day week back in 2018, a technology magazine in India wrote about it and described my company as uber cool. Now, I have to explain that we are a trust company. We've been around since the 1880s. We are as dull as ditch water. And in the 130 years of the trust industry, no one has ever described the trust industry as cool, let alone uber cool. But the point about this is that we now have people queuing down the street to join our company. We talked about the battle for talent. So I'm getting people coming to my organization, not because it's exciting. It's not like Murphy's investment banking. This is, we do death, that's what we do amongst other things. We're doing wills, we're doing trusts, we're doing estates. It's not actually the most exciting business you've ever been in. But it says something about our attitude, our culture. It says something about how we value and respect our people. And at the end, this is a very personal conversation between you and your people, that you are gifting them 40 days off a year. In return, they understand that I need, as a businessman, to have, the returns, that we need to make the money that we were making before. But actually, that's a very adult conversation. It absolutely changes the dynamic in your organization. And so, this has made me yet more excited to try and get a campaign up and running in India. Why not? That being said, I have to, in fairness, the Indian government is doing some stuff around the reduction in the working week already, and partly that is as a consequence of the 4-day week campaigns. But this is your chance to change your world, and I would absolutely encourage you to do it. And so I feel very humbled that you've got up at 5:30 in the morning to listen to me. But so thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Andrews, and I'll touch base with you outside of this, and and more power to you to make this a reality. I think it will lead our world to be a much more happier, healthier place, just because we are spending time at work and at home, and there's this perfect balance that most of us only dream about at this moment.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. All right. See you guys. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.